Hello. Having said last time that I was determined to actually fully finish something in an episode, I did realise right after I stopped recording that we didn't finish the beams for the railgun. This episode is actually going to be we're starting on feel, and the two most important ingredients for that, in my opinion, are sound and screen shake. We're going to do both of those. For this kind of game, anyway, those are the two most important things. So we're going to get both of those started, at least. Make some good first steps on that front. But we need to do the railgun thing first, because the issue, let me see if everything is in the state that I think it is. We've got a railgun here, we fire it, and these lasers just stay around forever, which is unfortunate. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is, so our railgun beam, I'm just opening the code file here. I am going to reload that. And, okay, it lost it briefly. Shall I increase my font size? Can I do that easily? If I go to options, it's quite small even for me. Everything's got reset because Windows has kind of reinstalled itself. It did an update that was so drastic it kind of lost its memory and decided I need to set up Windows for the first time again. Yeah, I'm actually going to make it really big because that'll be hopefully easier for you. So, our railgun beam inherits from bullet behavior. It is a child of bullet behavior. What we said is that a railgun beam is it's a subset of bullets. It's a type of bullet. And that's cool, but actually it doesn't inherit anything really currently. Or at least its update, we have an update function here, but it's just its own update. It's defined here and it does nothing. Whereas, I'm going to jump to bullet behavior here by holding down control and clicking on it. We jump to bullet, and in the bullets update code, it counts down its seconds until destroyed, and then when that's 0, it destroys itself. It also shrinks itself, which is not a thing we want to do exactly, but it doesn't matter if we inherit that because it's fine. So, I don't know if you remember this, but this was one of the weirder lines of code we ever wrote, but if you want something in a parent to be inherited by the child, then you have to make it protected, virtual. So protected means that it can be accessed by our children but no one else, and virtual means this might be overridden. Might not. Virtually all the things are going to use this. Some of them might override it. And then after saving that, we go into railgun beam, and I'm actually just going to delete update, and then I'm going to write override update. And as soon as I get there, it suggests the autocomplete. As soon as I hit enter, it's not only going to complete that, but it also inserts the word protected because it knows it has to be protected, because if you're going to override some other function, it has to have the same access modifier, which is what that word is called. Anyway, it does it for you because it's the right thing to do. And it also helpfully inserts base.update, which means that is the bit that's going to do all the bullet behavior stuff. So we can choose whether to do that or not. I think we should do it because it involves the countdown thing, which is that's what we want. And then the only other thing I want to do is make our beam fade out over time. I'll add a note here saying this will handle ticking down our life count, life timer, and killing us. But while that's happening, we want to fade our beam out. And we could do something where we sort of store the full lifetime and then divide our current lifetime by that to get a fraction and then use that to modify the thing of the beam. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to make it fade at a rate that will be somewhat arbitrary, matter of opinion. But this effect is not important, so it's just we can do it in one line of code, so we should. And that line of code is, Tom, the one that you remember from when you did it earlier. It's something to do with the beam. It's my beam dot. Is it as simple as end color? Yes, it is. It's as simple as end color. So our beam goes from us to the target, and the way we set it up, I guess I'll show this in the inspector. Where's our railgun beam prefab? Double click that. After a delay of unknown duration. We set up this color gradient thing here. If I click this, it starts transparent and it ends solid. And what I want to do is make that solid color fade out. I want it to fade to completely clear. There's a bunch of different ways we can do that, but I think the simplest is just to say, if I wrote, so that's the end color because it's where we hit the target. That's the end, and the start is where we are. If I wrote just color.clear, that would make the thing go immediately clear. We don't want that, obviously. I'm just going to put my phone on silent. It's already on silent. Okay, I'm going to throw my phone away. That will help. So we don't want it to go clear immediately, obviously. What we want it to do is to fade between its current color and clear. And to do that, we've used lerps before, haven't we? I'm not sure in what context. Probably just numbers. We can lerp between two numbers, but you can also lerp between two colors. So we call the color hotline, and we say, can you tell us what the, I was going to say midpoint, but it's not necessarily the midpoint. Can you tell us what color we get if we blend between the clear color and our current end color by how much? Let me think. It's just going to be like a fixed figure. We're just going to do, this is a really common pattern that I'll use several times in this episode that I really like, which is just multiplying. If you just multiply your current, if it was a brightness value, if you just multiplied it by 0.9 every frame, it's going to fade out. And it's going to fade out in a really nice way where the bigger it is, the faster it fades out. And then as it gets fainter, it's going to get slower. Because you're effectively reducing it by 10% every frame. And that sounds like quite small, but frames obviously happen very often, so that it adds up very fast. I'm only hesitating here because what do I want to do? Let's say, if I say 0.9 there, 0.9f to specify that we mean a float value, what does this say? We've said we want to lerp from the color clear to the color that we currently are, and we want to go 90% of the way there every frame. Arguably, that's a slightly backwards way of doing it, isn't it? Because we're not really going from clear to solid. We're going from solid to clear. So if I do it that way around, we're going from our current color to clear. We only want to go 10% of the way each frame. Let's see how that looks. I think it might be, we might want to actually make this slightly smaller. If this doesn't work, I'm going to do it the other way around, because I did it the other way around in my practice session. As I wrote it, I realized it doesn't make as much sense. It's not as intuitive, but it did work, which is a strong advantage of any given approach. Yeah, that is, oh, wait. The reason that is fading out immediately, apart from anything else, is in our railgun prefab, we never set seconds until destroyed. This is this quality that inherited from bullets. We left it at 0, which is actually kind of weird, isn't it? Because we had a property, what's the word, variable, called seconds until destroyed, and it was 0. It sounds like we're going to destroy it instantly, but it wasn't getting destroyed instantly because we weren't inheriting that ticking down property. I keep saying the word property. We weren't inheriting that ticking down behavior that the bullet had. Now that we are, we need to set that value, and it's good to set that anyway. Hey, look at that. That's what we want. Start strong, fades out. That feels about right, doesn't it? Cool. So, we've caught up. That is what we should have done at the end of the last episode. I'm not sorry I didn't do it, because it was getting kind of long. So, let's make some sounds first. The place that I used for sounds for my first game, Gunpoint, is freesound.org. And I recommend it. It's just a really nice place where people post sound effects with varying licenses, but most of them are under the Creative Commons Attribution license, or, let me see if I can find one, the public domain license. So you need to create an account here, which is actually, it's free, as the name implies. It's worth creating an account. I would do it even if I didn't have to do it, because it's really handy, because if I click here, I can see all the sounds I've downloaded, and that's super useful for crediting. because this is why I'm talking about licenses and stuff. We're just going to take sounds from here. We only want to take ones that we're allowed to use, and we want to credit everybody that we take them from. So we're going to note down everyone we use a sound from, and when we have credits, we'll put them in the credits. Don't release your game in between adding any sounds and doing the credits. So the things we want, I want a sound for the railgun, I want just a regular gun sound, and probably one for the shotgun, and then like an explosion sound for things dying. Just checking things are recording. And I found all these earlier, so I'm just going to jump straight to them. Although as I do, I'll double check the licenses, because I don't know if I verified all of these. What is this? This is a short explosion. I didn't do a test of... I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to mute my desktop audio, because you're probably going to hear that sound through my microphone, and you don't want to get it twice, right? So that's an explosion sound. It's from Animation Isaac, and the worker's license of the Creative Commons 0 license. Creative Commons 0 is public domain, that's what it means. And it actually means you don't have to credit them, but you should, because you just should. I believe you should credit everyone pretty much without exception. Creative Commons 0 is like, you can get away with not crediting them, but why not? Like, you should, because you need credits anyway, because you're bound to use some stuff that isn't under that license. And I just think if you include someone else's work in your thing, you should name them, because if you don't, it's not that they're going to get mad necessarily. Like, they've obviously intentionally released under that license. They know that they don't have to be credited. But you're just lying, aren't you? Like, if you just release a work and you don't say anyone else was involved, people will think you did it all. If you didn't do it all, you should say so. Anyway, that's a lot of ranting, given that we're actually not going to make credits this episode, because I don't have time to squeeze that in, as well as everything else. But it will be on our list. In fact, I'll write it down now. Let's do credits. And that dinging is my phone, sorry. I tried to silence it. It didn't work. Right, so we got that explosion sound, did we? Did we download it? Yes. This is... I, of course, have already downloaded these things, so I'm just going to be making copies of them. But let's download all the ones we want. So we wanted an explosion sound. We've done that, and we've checked there's the right license. And I'm going to write down that username. Would it make sense to do it here? No, I'm going to do it separately. In fact, let's just put it under credits. Explosion sound, Animation Isaac. I don't remember what all these are, so it's a exciting journey for me to find out. Gunshots and explosions. Short gunshot. Oh yeah. So this is like a nice... I like this one because it's really short and it's quite quiet. Not just in volume, but it just doesn't sound like a huge deal. And oh yeah, attribution license. So this one we legally have to credit them. We're going to anyway. This is actually going to be our Uzi sound, I think. Uzi sound, Johan Dieck. What is next? My philosophy of sound design is that the worst crime you can commit is having a sound that is too loud for the effect that it has. And by loud, I mean not just volume, but kind of punchiness and aggressiveness. It's okay if your sound is not as loud as the effect. Like if something's quiet but it has a huge effect, that doesn't feel bad. It sometimes feels weird. It's a distinctive feeling, but it can be good. But it's terrible if a gun is like really powerful sounding but then doesn't have a big effect. That feels really bad. My two examples of this are the silenced pistol in Deus Ex 1. Makes not a good noise. It's just this kind of very pathetic noise, but it's quite powerful, especially once it's like accurate. And that feels okay. It's weird, but it feels okay. You can get into it. It's got its own vibe. Versus the standard pistol from Half-Life 1 is a gun that has a very loud, scrapey, scratchy noise. It goes, it's a really kind of nasty sound. and it doesn't do much damage, and I hate the feel of that weapon. I don't know why I gave you that lecture. I think I was waiting for this page to load. This is the railgun sound. This is from, I mean, they've chosen the username deleted user 1941-307. It's a username. We'll credit it. Whatever you want, man. And then one more, I think. I seem to have two more here, but maybe one of them is one I didn't use. Oh yeah, this was, we don't need this one. I do like, this is someone's recorded them firing a 45, and I do like some of these sounds, but we'd have to edit it to get this out, so it's simpler for our purposes if we find ones that are just straightforward. Mishovath, a shotgun sound, which I like. Now that they're all downloaded, the way that we import them, I'm going to select the ones without the 1 in the title, but these are the 4 sounds we just downloaded. I am just going to right click and copy, and then I'm going to find our project folder, NoXP, the assets folder, and I just paste them in there. You could also do it by dragging it into Unity, into this project folder here, but if you just put them in a folder and explore it, it finds them too. So, all of our weapons are going to have a sound associated with them now. So we want to edit the, let's edit the weapon prefab first, which is this shiny lozenge. And the way you play a sound is you add a component called audio source. I know it was already there, but I'm going to type it because you will have to type it. And then we will slot something into this audio clip field here. I'm not going to do it now because this is the general prefab that applies to all of them. It doesn't really make sense to give them all the same sound. But I want to uncheck play on awake. Play on awake means as soon as this thing is created, it will play the sound. We don't want to do that with a gun. But we do want to open up weapon behavior, the script, and how will we do it? We'll define a public variable, a public audio source, and I'm just going to call it audio source because I'm not imaginative. And in our start event, we will say audio source equals get component audio source. So we just look for an audio source on our same game object. And then when we fire, right here, we'll just do audio source dot play. Play with brackets, pretty self-explanatory. It's going to play whatever sound we slotted into there. So that's all the things we need to do to the prefab. Now if we go back into our scene, any minute now, I guess let's do the railgun one first because we put that right near where we spawn. Now that I click on the railgun, I see the audio source down here, and I can click this little target next to the audio clip, and that's nice because it will bring up a filtered list of, like, that's got to be a sound, so I'm only going to show you sounds. And where's our railgun? It's right there. Let's just click play and just check that works. Yes, it does. That's quite, I'm going to turn it down a bit. That was up. Oops. Yeah, and that, to me, that immediately feels way better. So, Uzi, let's give that one the, what was that? That was just short gunshot, wasn't it? That's the one I like for Uzi. And shotgun, link that up to the shotgun. The explosion is going to be, we're going to do it a slightly different way, so I won't do that just yet. I'll just get all the weapons and then show you them sounding different. There's the railgun. Oh, that's the rifle. I haven't set a sound for that yet. This is the Uzi. It's got a kind of rattly feel to it. And then this is the shotgun. Feels quite heavy. Yeah, I like all of those in practice. Rifle, I'm gonna disable the rifle for now. I don't want to delete it necessarily because we haven't made it into a prefab of its own. It's just a variant of it's just a modified instance of the weapon prefab. We might want it later, but right now it feels kind of redundant, doesn't it? Because we've got the railgun now as our single shot, high damage thing. And, you know, I don't want to have to find a sound for it, frankly. Okay, so those are all the sounds for weapons. That's pretty easy. Sounds for the explosions. So we have a problem with that because where is our explosion? This thing, we could add an audio source to this and give it a sound. And in fact, we wouldn't even have to write any code. We can just tell the audio source to play when it starts. But the problem is that our explosion only lasts for, in fact, we can see it right here in the inspector, seconds to exist 0.2. So it will vanish from existence before the sound has finished playing. We could have it stick around until the sound has finished playing, but I tried that and there's a problem, which is our explosion just kills things all the time. All the time it exists, it's killing everything it touches. And so if we make it last longer, we've changed the gameplay just for the sake of a sound effect. And yes, we can get around that. We can have it turn its own collider off. We could have it shrink itself, all those kinds of things. But we're changing the functionality of the thing just to support a sound. Really, it's not solving the fundamental problem, which is there's no reason that the explosion object needs to continue to exist for us to keep hearing the sound fading out. That's not how life works. Like, you don't need... An object doesn't need to continue to exist for you to hear the sound that it made destroying itself. Sounds can stick around and echo and stuff. And in fact, the explosion sound we have, most of the duration of it is the sort of aftermath of the sound. It's if I say echo, you probably think of the wrong thing, but it kind of is echo or reverb or whatever. If you ever heard a sound played in an acoustically deadened room, you will know how incredibly brief sounds truly are. I don't know why I'm going to a huge digression about that. I'm just trying to justify the fact that I think the sound should be its own object. Like, the explosion should create a sound object. The sound object sticks around until it's done playing. The explosion object can last for as long or as short as the explosion object needs to last to do its gameplay job. The way we do sounds in Tactical Breach Wizards, the main game I'm working on, is that every sound pretty much is its own entity. Like, when we want a sound, we just tell a sound manager to create a sound at that location. We don't actually have players and bullets and explosions all with their own little speakers attached to them, because it's just too much of a hassle to manage the fact that the thing is can only continue making a sound while it still exists. So let's create a new game object. We're just going to go into our scene. I guess I'm going to right click just at the bottom of the hierarchy and say create empty. I'll call it sound object. No, I'm not going to call it that. I'm going to call it explosion sound, because this thing we're creating will only be for the explosion. And we will give it an audio source, and we'll assign it the short explosion. And yeah, let's get that set up and working as soon as possible. So explosion behavior is this code here. What we'll do is we'll give this a slot for a game object. Public game object. I'm just going to call it sound, I think. And then as soon as we're created, let's do instantiate sound. And we want to instantiate it at our position. And at our rotation, although it couldn't matter less what rotation the sound is. The position does matter because that's where the sound's coming from. We do want it to sound like it's coming from where we exist. And if we were a million miles off screen, the player wouldn't hear it, which is good. So after I've done that, I'm going to open up the explosion prefab. We should find it now has a slot for a sound. That's actually not a good name. Sorry, I'm going to rename it before I do anything with it. If I hit Control RR, it'll let me rename it. I'm going to call it sound object, because we want to distinguish between, this is a game object that plays a sound, it isn't the sound clip itself. We couldn't actually make a mistake along those lines because it won't let us put a sound in there. We have to put an object in there, but we might as well keep our names as clear as possible. If I go to assets here, it should be easy to find. No, it's not, because I forgot a step. After we made the explosion sound, just drag it into the project folder, because we want it to be a prefab. We don't actually want one in the scene right now. We wanted to create a prefab. I just forgot that step. So back in the explosion prefab, when we click the little target next to sound object and assets, we can see a nice list of all the things we could put in this slot, and explosion sound is the one we want. I think this will work. There's one more step we want to do just to be clean and tidy about it. Yeah, we hear that explosion. Hang on, I need to quiet a weapon because I'm not 100% sure I did it. Yeah, there you go. You definitely hear that explosion, don't you? And when there's a lot of them, you hear it a lot. I'm going to fire it up again because I want to show you the problem we're about to fix. The problem we're about to fix is that in our hierarchy now, we got a lot of explosion sounds, and they're only going to get more and more and more. So those objects, they're finished playing, but they're sticking around. We didn't tell them to ever destroy themselves. So we actually need this explosion sound. Let's add a component. We're going to write a new script for this, really simple script. I'm just going to call it one shot sound, a sound that plays once. And all that script is going to do we'll do it the same way we did for the weapon, where we have a audio source. This time, rather than setting that no, we're doing it the same way, sorry. I was thinking we did something different with the other thing, but we didn't. We're just going to do get component audio source. I think last time I made the variable public. It doesn't need to be public. It doesn't matter if it is, but there's no reason to do it. So we have a reference to our audio source, and all we want to know is if audio source... no, not spelled like that. Spelled like this. Is playing... I'm being too ambitious with my autocomplete. If audio source is playing, then... Sorry, those brackets are not needed, are they? Yeah, it's just a variable. And we actually want to check that that's false. If the audio source is no longer playing, then destroy game object. So when we finish playing our sound, destroy the object, clean it up. So we don't need to do it in the inspector because we use get component to find a reference to the thing. And so I called it explosion sound because this is hard-coded to have the explosion sound in it. If we got to the situation where we had loads of these things that we wanted to create, we'd probably create, a system for where there's one generic object and then we... that doesn't work. What did I do wrong? Oh my god, sorry, yeah, that's crazy. I did not mean to do that. Obviously audio source equals get component audio source. I don't know what the dot was about there. Alright, let's kill a bunch of stuff to create these, and then we should see all those sounds, and they'll disappear. Cool, that's all working. So we're done on sounds for now. The next thing is screen shake, and for this I'm actually going to we probably won't even do screen shake today. We're going to do a thing that I think is more important, which is screen jolt. So it's a subtle distinction, but commonly when people talk about screen shake, they often talk about, when an explosion goes off, you want the screen to rock around. Sure, that's good, you should do that. But nothing like as important as selling impacts, and in the case of a game with guns in it, you want to make the guns feel good. And that is a case of having the screen jolt in a particular direction and then return to back to where it was. It's especially true for melee combat, although we're not doing any of that yet. But yeah, you want to make something feel impactful. It should feel like it's jogged the screen, and that, like, you can do screen shake for that, where it just rumbles around in a random direction and it adds something to the effect of the impact, but it doesn't it's not specific. It doesn't communicate something about the interaction, and I find the intentional directional jolting of the camera is way more effective. So we're going to do that first. We'll do screen shake too, because it's not too hard to add that on, but they are different things. It's not... I've tried in the past to write like one system that handles them both, and like my version of a system that handles them both is like only requires like 7 variables and is, you know, a very short script. But it is 2 different systems layered on top of each other, because if you try and do it with one system, it gets more complicated than you'd think. So, this episode has, one of the reasons it's been a while since the last episode is it's a very big topic, and I'm trying to boil it down to very small, achievable tasks, and that itself is a whole bunch of work that's taken quite a long time to figure out what this episode should be. So we're going to write a new script that I'm just going to call it, I think I'll call it screen shake, because that is the sort of general term for this whole genre of stuff. I'm being pedantic when I say that screen jolt is its own thing. It's not a fundamentally different thing to screen shake, it's just it's kind of a subset of it. So our screen shake script will need a bunch of public variables, one of which will be public float screen. Oh wait, sorry. So we are going to keep track of where the camera normally is. So that'll be the first thing we have a variable for, is a vector3 for normal position. And then another vector3 we want is jolt vector. So because we are going to make the camera jolt in a direction, when you fire a gun, I want the camera to jolt in the other direction. Or I guess jolt backwards as if it's being kicked by the force of the shot. And we're going to store that as a vector because it matters what direction we go in, right? Anytime that you want something that's not just a linear quantity, not just a single amount, we're going to define a direction, so we need a vector for that. And then we do need a float, public float for jolt decay factor. So that is remember with the railgun beam, I had this 0.05 thing that's this, it's a multiple, it's shaving off 5% every frame. We're going to do something similar with jolt decay. We're going to shave off, X% every frame. And that'll be that figure. So on startup, normal position is wherever we are when the game starts. So for now we have a fixed camera in our game. We'll probably change that later, but we can modify this when we do that. And then I'm going to make the jolt vector public because editing that in the inspector will be useful. And then the camera's transform.position, each frame, should be its normal position plus the jolt vector. So, if you tell us to jolt the camera back a meter, then our position should be our normal position minus a meter in that direction, or plus a meter in that direction, whatever, plus the vector that represents that movement. But we also want the jolt vector the jolt amount to decay over time. We don't want it to just jolt back and stay there. We want it to gradually return. So jolt vector is going to be multiplied by jolt decay factor. And this is all we need just to show jolt working. Obviously nothing talks to the camera yet, but we'll just do that manually in the inspector. That's why I made the jolt vector public. So when we go back to the inspector, we'll need to set some values here. Jolt decay factor, I'm going to make it 0.7, I think. It's the way we're doing, because we're multiplying the jolt vector by this every frame, our value, the higher it is, the slower jolt decays. So this is really how much jolt is retained each frame to frame. You could phrase it that way, jolt retention factor. I think that's a bit weirder to say. Just as long as you understand that the higher it is, the longer the jolt lasts. So if I start the game now, and I set X to 1 here, we see it bump, right? And if I set it 10, it bumps a lot. Set it to 100, it bumps a lot. Set it to 1,000, it bumps a lot. It comes back pretty reliably, you know, within a set amount of time, doesn't it? It's never a long delay, even when I set it thousands of miles out, and that's because we're doing this multiplicative effect. And you might, if you remember earlier lessons, the fact that we're doing this update means that it could potentially be different on different people's computers. We could do it in fixed update instead. Should we? It'll be smoother if we do it in update. We could, if we wanted to, we could adjust the factor, but we're not going to do that. Basically, it looks fine. And because it's a cosmetic thing, it doesn't matter that much if it's a bit different for you versus me. It's not going to change the outcome of the game. So that's cool, but now we need something. We want weapons to tell the screen to shake, right? Screen to jolt. And to do that, we are going to want a reference to the camera. So I'm going to open up our references and create a public static screen shake, and just call it screen shake. And when screen shake starts up, we're going to do this in awake. If I didn't already explain, awake happens before start, and awake is usually a good place to set up references, because then they'll all be in place when start runs, and start might want to talk to some things that are references that have already been established. References.screenshake equals this. So we're just saying we're the screenshake thing. And then weapon behavior, right where we had the audio source play, let's also do references screenshake. I misspelled references. Any kind of autocomplete would be nice. There we go. Screenshake jolt vector equals transform dot forward. So we're trying to tell the screen to shake or to jolt in backwards, basically. Like we're shooting this way, I want the screen to go that way. So it's our transform forward times, we could do -1. Let's do that. That's going to be a very mild jolt, but we will see it working at least. There you go. A little bit of a bump. Man, it feels so much better with sound than this. So that's all good. The only thing I want to change is that I actually want a public float for kick amount, and that way we can vary it per weapon. So instead of multiplying it by -1, so we multiplied transform forward by -1 to get the backwards vector, but we didn't really care about the amount. We just did it by -1. You know, if I do it by minus kick amount, then it's going backwards, and it's going backwards by that amount. You could, if you like, you can do times -1 times kick amount, but just putting a minus in front of a variable gets you the negative version of it. So after doing that, we need to actually set that. I think for Uzi, 1 is probably the correct value, kick amount 1, because that's going to be firing all like very rapidly. For the railgun, maybe 3. And for the shotgun, that's the one I want most on, I'm going to say 10. So that's going to be a big jolt. Let me, my other computer turned off. So railgun, 3. That feels pretty meaty. Uzi, a steady rattling. Feels good actually. It doesn't feel like super powerful, but it shouldn't. And then shotgun, yeah, it feels meaty. Cool. Wait, what was that? What's happening here? I can't fire. What is this weapon I've switched to? What is my current weapon? Oh, did I pick up the deactivated rifle? No, I've only got 3 things in my weapons list. Oh, I picked up the Uzi twice. Oh, we still got that bug. Okay, well, we won't fix that this time. There must be something about, the Uzi must have 2 colliders or something. So I've got a weird defunct Uzi. So this is good. This is most of what we wanted to do. I just want to do one thing. There's a slight effect. You might be noticing it with the shotgun. So our screen shake, the jolt is instantaneous. When we ask it to jolt, it jolts immediately. So if we're jolting it 10 meters back, which we actually are with the shotgun, it travels instantaneously, and then there's a forward motion as it recovers. So that's a bit sharp. It can be a little bit jarring. It could be smoother. And B, I think it's a subtle effect that I see sometimes. I don't see it with every shot, but every now and then my brain reads the thing wrong, because the backwards motion, because it's instantaneous, it almost doesn't read as motion. And the forward motion does read as motion. And so every now and then my brain thinks, did that go the wrong way? Did it shoot forwards? And it didn't. It shot backwards in a way that my brain missed, and then the forwards motion it caught. And so that's why I think it's worth smoothing this out. And to do that, I'm going to do a public float max move speed. And there's a really nice function that I think I did know about this, but I haven't been using it, and I should do, which is instead of... So this is the line that just sets it. We just say add the jolt vector no matter what it is. Let's be gentler about that. Let's say call the vector 3 hotline and move us towards that. So move towards, as I write it, it pops up and it says, the first thing I want to know is what's your current position, then where are you trying to get to, and how far are you willing to move in a given frame. And so what's our current position? Well, it's transformed opposition. Come on. Where are we going? We're going to normal position plus jolt vector. And how fast are we willing to move? We're willing to go to max move speed times time.delta time. So we need to add that because we want it to be, to make it not frame rate dependent. Obviously some of this stuff is frame rate dependent, but that thing we're not going to make frame rate dependent. So now in our camera, max move speed, let's set it really low at first and we'll see, so you'll see the effect really strongly. It is still rocking, there is still a slight jolt, but you're just not seeing it because it's so smoothed out. Because this will actually reduce the amount of screen jolt that can happen, because it can't jump instantly anymore. It can only move a certain speed, and if it just doesn't get to the full jolt amount, it's already returning by the time it continues to try. So that's very smooth and very dampened. I'm going to go get a shotgun because that's our biggest kicker. Yeah, and that's too slow, isn't it? So if we made it 100, how's that? That's both smooth and quite impactful. I think it's still a little bit slower than I like. I might say, what's 200 feel like? That I really like. That I really like. It's really fast, the back jolt, but it is motion. My brain reads it as motion. It doesn't forget that it's moving. And it just overall feels really nice too. The whole thing just feels a lot much slicker with that, I think. Just that nice limiter on the motion. So that is it for this episode. We will do, like I say, we'll do normal screen shake as well on these explosions. I can't stop killing these things with a railgun, it's really satisfying. And I might do some particle effects for those explosions too. I'm going to pause this. Obviously we need to do credits. Oh yeah, some lights perhaps on some of this stuff. Lighting effects are quite easy in Unity. I was thinking that maybe only some of the enemies should explode. Radical thought, I know, but maybe not all of them should blow up an impact. But it's funny because one of the reasons I wrote that down is I was just thinking, God, everything's blowing up in a huge chain reaction, but I don't really care. Like doesn't feel as good as it should. And I'm an idiot. The reason it didn't feel good is because we hadn't added feel. Literally, we had feel written down on our to-do list, not yet done. And I'm thinking, why doesn't this feel good? Now that it's in there, it does feel good. it's excessive. You don't want to give the player like infinite reward all the time. So we may still, make that change so that not all of them do blow up. But this is starting to feel really nice, I think.